I wanted to come in here and dance out on the stage instead of creep up the stairs. And I wanted to burst out in song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. And then I have a little group right over here and go, sock it to me, sock it to me, sock it to me. I decided not to do that because Aretha Franklin had already claimed that spot in 1968. And then I thought, oh no, I know what I'll do. I will embrace the idea of a long-faced comedian. I'll be kind of the Rodney Dangerfield of the group. And I'll say, I just don't get no respect. Because indeed, that's really what I'm supposed to deal with tonight, is to talk about respect, earning it and not expecting it. You'd be seated there. Because as I think about staff members in Southern Baptist churches, I'm finding that most of us vacillate between this position of, I really demand respect. I want my senior pastor, he better treat me right and value me and see me as indispensable. And then there are others that just, oh, nobody loves me. I don't care. I don't know. No, it's not just my pastor. My church doesn't even know who I am. I don't get any platform time. I understand. Well, where are we on this continuum? And how do we get this respect where we earn it and not demand it? Let me give you an outline, just a brief outline, because we're really pressed on time today. But it's kind of like the high school cheerleader, you know, that gives, give me an R, give me an E. Well, I'm going to do that. This afternoon, I want to talk to you a little bit about our role. The role that we have. You say, well, we're different roles, and we are. Some of us are associate pastors for discipleship, others are children's workers, others are student leaders, some are denominational leaders, but we all have a role. Do you know what it is? And do you feel good about it? Oh, I know that embraces task, certain job responsibilities. See, I always wanted to be the pastor, the senior pastor. God didn't call me there. I have to wrestle with that role. But you know, role is more than tasks and responsibilities. It's also how we feel about the position itself and how our leadership grows out of that position. It's about titles. It's about relationships. Ran into a professor on the way down here that reminded me of a story when he was wrestling at one time with why he wasn't getting this title. And he really wanted that title. And I asked him a question. Is your having that title or not having that title keeping you from doing what God has called you to do? If we're going to get respect from our pastors, from our congregations, the reality is we need to be really secure in our role. Know who we are in that role. We could talk so much about that in so many different ways. I think we'll just leave it alone for this afternoon. Let me encourage you as you think about those responsibilities that you have, though, to enlarge them. Let your ministry, over these years, I've discovered that that's helped me, is to allow my ministry to be expanded, to be extended, to embrace new things, to become indispensable in some ways. The book, Leading from the Second Chair, really helpful in that we need to go deep in our particular responsibilities, but we need to go wide in our connection to the church. Kind of reminds me of that old children's story, or children's song, Deep and Wide. Are you allowing that to happen in your ministry? To where, yes, you are the very best in the church as that discipleship pastor or that preschool leader. But how are you moving across the spectrum of the entire church? God's called you to that fuller church ministry, not just that department or division. Some organizational leaders talked about matrix organizations and how you have responsibilities in this way, but you also have responsibilities across the organization. While many organizational people have found that's not helpful, I found some churches that have embraced it and allowed their staff to really find indispensable relationships. Well, it's not only about how we enlarge our ministry, but there's also, as we try to outline our movement toward respect, that we have to deal with the area of submission. Oh, it gets kind of quiet when we talk about submission. But you know, it's not just about an organizational, managerial hierarchy. It's also a biblical principle that we are to voluntarily submit one to another. And that jealousy that erupts on staff from time to time really doesn't have any place. You say, but I'm going to be abused and taken advantage of. Probably. Submission. Now, a word of caution here. It's probably worthy of a long discussion, but be real careful that your ecclesiology does not draw primarily from biblical passages that are speaking almost exclusively of marital and familial relationships. That can get you in some real trouble there about this area of submission in church life. Personality. Not only your personality of the pastor you work with. There's no need for me to talk about Myers-Briggs, DISC, PF16, and a host of other personality instruments. But do you know who you are? What's your preferred way of working when things are going well? Your preferred way of working when you're under stress? Oh, and by the way, do you know how your pastor prefers to work when he is under stress? It might be really helpful to know that, because that bite that you took so personally may not have been personal at all. It's also helpful if he knows how you receive things. Do you prefer to be praised in public, or a private pat on the back that will work just fine? Personality, there's so much we could talk about there. We have a seminar we do here at New Orleans called Creating a Winning Team, and we look at a lot of these types of dynamics, and very helpful. As you work with volunteer leaders in your church, perhaps you're using different instruments or things like place that are helping to identify those personality and passions that all work together. Let me also mention in our high school spelling of the word respect that there comes a time when we simply have to realize that we are called to endure. There are Mondays that I wake up. Well, actually, I wake up every Monday. So far, so good. But there are Mondays that I wake up that I want to pull the covers up and go back, because it's been one of those Sundays. And you feel that way, and we all do. Sometimes there are staff meetings or private meetings with a pastor that you just say, "You jerk." No, you don't say it out loud. You just privately. I understand. There's an aspect of enduring. When we know what our purpose is and our direction, the wonderful opportunity that we have to press on to the high calling in Christ Jesus. There's an endure side. So I'm really not asking you or suggesting by any means, as you demand respect or even as you earn respect, that you resign once a month. Sometimes we simply have to endure. I'm reminded of Paul as he came and spoke to, or as he sent the letter to the church at Colossae, and he said it was his earnest desire to present everyone complete in Christ. Some of the translations use the word mature there. Other translations use the word that's so threatening to us, and they say, it was my desire to present everyone perfect in Christ. Wow, that's a challenge. And yet that's our calling. And that requires a degree of endurance, of pressing on to the high calling. As we come to another letter, though, I wrote down the word Christ, but I will tell you, I struggled here not with Christ, but I struggled with another word that I wanted to use, and that was the word competence. As we're seeking to be seen as indispensable by our churches and by our senior pastors, we have to be seen as competent. Kind of rolling around in my ideas and in my mind is this idea of consciously competent. You see, it's kind of a matrix that sometimes you find a person is that they're competent, but they don't know it. They're unconsciously competent. They just do it. It works for them. Maybe they've seen it, maybe they picked up some habits, whatever, but they're unconsciously competent. Now, unfortunately, I've seen some people also that are unconsciously incompetent. They're really bad and they don't know it. They're really a challenge to work with. Sometimes you find a person, though, that is consciously incompetent. They know that they don't have skills. And that's so wonderful to work with them and to find ways to strengthen them and to train them and help them. But isn't it a joy when you can present yourself and work with people that are consciously competent? They know what they're supposed to do. They know how to do it, and they know that they know how to do it. If we want respect, to be seen as indispensable, we need to be people that are consciously competent. Oh, but the word that I placed on the stage is you would expect. I mean, we're meeting in a seminary after all. The idea of Christ. Because aren't we all seen as brothers and sisters in Christ? That person that I labeled a jerk a moment ago, a brother in Christ. There ought to be something distinctive about the fact that we join together in church life. That we're an organization, we're a body, we're all the types of structures that we can talk about, but we're in Christ. Wouldn't it be nice when people view us that they say there's something different about the way they do staff life? There's something different about the way they hire and train, and there's even something different about the way that we dismiss. Oh, when I think about that senior pastor that I work with, don't I have to realize there's some things about forgiveness and forbearance and dealing with conflict? You say, yeah, but that's about the congregation. No. It's about how we do life together as a team. R-E-S-P-E-C. Well, I guess there's one more letter in there. And that's the idea of time. We've actually made several allusions to time today. The idea of, for such a time as this, the Mordecai to Esther phrase. The fact that maybe you are in your place right now to be seen as indispensable, to be valued, to be seen as important, because it is for such a time as this. Maybe it's that you need to be aware of the times in which you work, much as the numbers would reveal the sons of Issachar. Maybe it's a sense of timing, knowing when to do things that John Cotter and his change process would have helped us to work with. But there's a sense of time, knowing that it's going to take some time to be seen as indispensable in your church. Oh, there's also the reality that there comes a time that maybe God says it's time to move on. Endure, yes, but there's a time that I'm moving you on. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. You don't have to sock it to me, and you don't have to drop your lower lip. The reality is that we all can use a great deal of respect. Respect from our congregation, but I think most of us really want to embrace and enjoy the respect of our pastors. When I left New Orleans Seminary some almost 8 years ago to go to Oklahoma City and to serve in a church there, I'd already been there a year. You say, well, how'd you do that? Well, I was a consultant. You know, consultants are wonderful things. You get respect. You get credibility. And I got the opportunity every time that I went to that church once a month to leave a to-do list for the senior pastor. That's fun. But you know, when I went there as the associate pastor, the to-do list changed directions. And I no longer had the same respect, perceived importance, indispensability, whatever that word is, that I'd had as a consultant because I was a staff member now. It was a great relationship. Things went, pastor came, pastor goes, and I go through an interim and I get a new pastor. Transitions are really fun. We'll talk about those tomorrow a little bit. Got a new young pastor, 20 years my junior, great guy, wonderful things, but his experience was in smaller churches exclusively. Grew up in a very small church with his father as the sole staff member, pastor, leader, everything. Grew up with a history of the pastor does everything. It's quite a change from the guy who has been the consultant. Wasn't conflict, wasn't challenge, just a whole lot different. Not necessarily feeling quite so valued, quite so indispensable. Didn't feel quite the same amount of respect. Pastor's there 7-8 months and he's diagnosed with terminal cancer. Finds that he has given 7 to 9 months to live. He undergoes extensive chemotherapy, surgical procedures, significant debilitation, and beats the odds. Now, 2.5 years later, he's alive. But there's been all types of challenges. He's wrestled with that. He's been out of the pulpit, been out of the leadership for months at a time. Staff members coming to the old guy saying, "We want you to fix it. We need you to be the leader." I say, "I'm not the pastor. I have my role, and it's not the senior pastor." But no. I'll lead, I'll guide, I'll support, I'll do anything I can, but I'm not the pastor. Things get better. Pastor improves. We make incredible changes over the last year, and I'll talk about some of those in our breakout group tomorrow. Fact is, he still struggles. His life's out of control. Been back in the hospital the last 3 weeks. A lot of challenges. As he deals with that, one of the ways that with his background, personality, and history, he deals with things is to try to do everything himself. The micromanager on steroids. I've been working with him all these times, and what a great relationship we have. As Shane and I have worked together through this process, these horrible 2.5 years of challenge in his health. One of the speeches that I've given over and over to him is, "Pastor, you don't have to do everything." Said to him, "Pastor, I really only need 3 things from you. One is I need you to stand every week and deliver a biblical message from God, thoroughly grounded in the Bible. If we have to do a weekend at Bernie's type event where we prop you up or something, we need you in the pulpit on Sunday morning. The second thing is I need you to cast vision for the church. And 3, I need you to pastor and lead the church. Lead the staff, pastor and lead the staff. The reality is everything else we can do for you." And yet I find him working at 8 o'clock in the evening doing a stat sheet to record all the attendance. You understand? But he could control the stat sheet when he couldn't control his health. So we progress through all of these things and desire to do good things, to experience trust, relationship, indispensability. The other day he called me in about a little over 2.5 weeks ago. He said, "Joe, I need to ask you to do something." Well, he said, "Really, I need to give you permission to do something." I said, "Whatever you need, Pastor, whatever." He said, "No, here's what I want to do. I want to give you permission over these next weeks, months, whatever we have, for you to tell me not to do something. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you've been preaching at me for 2.5 years now about you need to preach and vision cast and pastor and lead the staff. And I've been doing a whole lot of other things. He said, it's okay for you to come in and tell me, Pastor, don't do it. I said, I can handle it. I said, but let me tell you something. I said, you have given me the ultimate respect by giving me that permission. And I will do anything and everything that I can for you. It takes a long time to earn respect. You simply can't demand it.